Walk into a damp basement after a week of heavy rain, and you'll probably hear the familiar hum of an electric dehumidifier working overtime. Without it, mold can spread, wood can warp, and the air quickly begins to feel heavy and stale. But there are communities across rural America where that familiar machine has never been part of everyday life. Many Amish families have lived for generations without plugging in a dehumidifier, even in regions where summer humidity can be intense. Their homes, barns, root cellars, and food storage rooms often stay surprisingly dry, not because they have a secret modern invention, but because they rely on building methods and everyday habits that most people have forgotten. Among those traditions is an ordinary clay brick. It costs little, attracts almost no attention, and certainly doesn't look like technology. Yet it points to a much bigger system of old-world wisdom about managing moisture. The real surprise isn't that a brick can absorb a little water from the air. The surprise is why the Amish rarely needed to depend on machines in the first place. And once you understand the entire system, you may never look at your own home the same way again. Modern homes are designed around convenience. If the air becomes too humid, we buy a dehumidifier. If the house feels too dry, we install a humidifier. If fresh air isn't moving through the rooms, we turn on another fan. Little by little, we've come to depend on powered solutions for problems that earlier generations often solved through thoughtful design. The Amish approach offers a fascinating contrast. Their homes are built to work with nature instead of constantly fighting it. Every season brings different challenges, from damp spring mornings to humid summer afternoons and freezing winter nights. Instead of relying on electronics, many Amish households use careful planning, natural ventilation, traditional building materials, and daily routines that help control moisture over time. The humble brick is only one small piece of that puzzle. As we explore these traditions, you'll discover how architecture, craftsmanship, food preservation, and generations of practical experience come together to create homes that remain remarkably comfortable. But that's only the beginning. Later, we'll uncover why some of the most important moisture control techniques aren't visible at all, and why modern construction has quietly abandoned many of them. Humidity is an invisible force. You can't always see it, but you can certainly feel it. Too much moisture in the air encourages mold, mildew, rust, and decay. Clothing develops musty odors. Wooden furniture swells. Stored grain spoils more quickly. Even simple tasks like drying laundry become difficult. For farming families, humidity affects nearly everything. Fresh hay stored with too much moisture can spoil. Vegetables kept in storage may rot before winter ends. Wooden barns last longer when moisture is carefully managed. Handcrafted furniture depends on stable conditions to prevent cracking or warping. Long before electricity became common, people had no choice but to understand these challenges. The Amish inherited many of those practical lessons from European farming traditions dating back centuries. When Amish families settled across places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and other regions with changing seasons, they adapted those methods to local climates. Instead of asking, which machine should solve this problem, they asked a different question. How should we build our homes so the problem doesn't become severe in the first place? That simple shift in thinking changed everything. Modern technology often treats the symptom. Traditional craftsmanship tries to prevent the symptom from appearing. And this is where the story becomes much more interesting. Imagine walking through an old farmhouse just after sunrise. Soft light filters through lace curtains. The scent of fresh bread drifts from the kitchen. Outside, horses wait quietly near the barn while dew sparkles across the fields. Nothing seems unusual. Yet tucked beneath a wood stove, resting near a cellar wall, or positioned where air naturally circulates, you may notice an ordinary clay brick. By itself, a brick is no miracle. Because fired clay is porous, it can temporarily absorb and release small amounts of moisture from the surrounding air. It won't replace a modern dehumidifier, nor does it magically pull gallons of water from a room. But as part of a naturally ventilated home built with breathable materials, it helps moderate moisture in subtle ways. More importantly, it reflects a broader philosophy. Traditional builders often chose materials that could breathe. Clay brick, lime mortar, untreated wood, and natural plaster allow small amounts of moisture to move through them instead of trapping water inside walls. Modern construction frequently relies on synthetic barriers that seal buildings tightly. While these systems improve energy efficiency, they also make proper ventilation even more important. Without good airflow, moisture can become trapped indoors. Older Amish homes often strike a different balance. The goal isn't to eliminate every drop of humidity. The goal is to let the house respond naturally as conditions change. That idea sounds surprisingly simple. Yet it took generations of observation to perfect. One of the biggest differences between traditional Amish homes and many modern houses is something you can't easily photograph. It's the movement of air. On warm mornings, windows are open to create gentle cross breezes. Interior layouts encourage air to flow from one side of the home to the other. Covered porches shade walls from direct summer sun, helping interior spaces remain cooler. Attics aren't forgotten storage spaces. They become part of the home's ventilation system, allowing warm, moisture-laden air to rise and escape. Cellars are carefully positioned below ground, where surrounding earth helps stabilize temperature throughout the year. Rather than depending on compressors and fans, these spaces use the steady conditions of the soil itself. Wood stoves also play an unexpected role. During colder months, the steady heat they produce naturally lowers indoor humidity while warming the home. Families who understand their stoves know that heating, cooking, drying clothes, and controlling moisture are all connected. Nothing operates in isolation. Every part of the household supports another. That kind of integrated thinking is becoming increasingly rare. But the most remarkable part comes later, because the Amish don't rely on architecture alone. Their daily routines are just as important as the buildings themselves. A machine can remove moisture from the air after it appears. The Amish way often focuses on preventing excess moisture from building up in the first place. Fresh laundry is rarely piled into damp corners. Firewood is stacked where it can dry thoroughly before coming indoors. Root vegetables are sorted carefully so damaged produce doesn't introduce unnecessary moisture into storage bins. Barn doors are opened at the right times of day to improve airflow. Windows are adjusted with changing weather rather than left permanently sealed. Even kitchens play a role. Large batches of canning are often planned around seasons when outdoor work and natural ventilation make handling steam easier. These small routines may seem insignificant on their own. Together, they create a home where humidity is managed almost continuously rather than corrected after problems appear. To an outsider, these practices can look old-fashioned. To the families who rely on them, they are simply part of living attentively. And that attention to detail is where the Amish approach begins to reveal its greatest strength. Because what they protect isn't just their homes. They're protecting generations of craftsmanship, stored harvests, treasured furniture, handwritten family Bibles, handmade quilts, and the quiet rhythm of a household designed to last. But there is one place where this philosophy becomes even more impressive: the root cellar. That forgotten underground space holds one of the oldest and most effective lessons in moisture management, a lesson we'll explore next. Step down a narrow set of stone or wooden stairs beneath an old farmhouse, and the world changes almost instantly. The bright summer sun disappears. The sounds of the farm become distant. The air feels cooler, calmer, and noticeably steadier than the weather outside. This is the root cellar, a space that generations of Amish families have relied upon long before refrigerators and climate-controlled storage became common. To many people today, it looks like nothing more than an underground room with shelves lined with jars and baskets. But in reality, it's a carefully engineered environment. The earth surrounding the cellar acts as a natural insulator, slowing dramatic swings in temperature throughout the year. Thick walls help buffer the space from the heat of summer and the bitter cold of winter. Small ventilation openings allow stale air to leave while drawing in fresh air when conditions are right. Every detail serves a purpose. Potatoes, carrots, onions, apples, cabbage, squash, and countless other crops can remain usable for months when stored under the proper conditions. Too much moisture encourages mold. Too little moisture causes vegetables to shrivel. Finding the balance isn't an accident. It's the result of generations paying close attention to how food behaves through changing seasons. Many Amish families learn these lessons early in life. Children helping with the harvest soon discover that storing produce isn't simply a matter of putting it on a shelf. Each crop has its own needs. Some vegetables are stored separately because they release gases that cause nearby produce to spoil faster. Wooden crates allow air to circulate. Shelves are spaced to encourage gentle airflow. Damaged vegetables are removed quickly before they affect everything around them. The cellar itself becomes a living classroom. No digital sensors. No smartphone alerts. Just observation, experience, and quiet consistency. And while modern homeowners often purchase specialized storage systems, these traditional methods remind us that thoughtful design can sometimes accomplish what expensive equipment struggles to do. But preserving food is only part of the story. The Amish have spent centuries learning how moisture affects every material around them. And nowhere is that understanding more visible than inside the workshop. Walk into an Amish woodworking shop, and one of the first things you'll notice is the smell. Fresh-cut oak. Cherry. Maple. Walnut. Each board carries its own scent, its own grain, and its own personality. But every experienced craftsman knows something that beginners often overlook. Wood is never completely still. It breathes. It expands as humidity rises. It contracts as the air becomes drier. Ignoring that simple fact can ruin weeks, or even months, of careful work. A cabinet door that fits perfectly in one season may bind tightly in another if moisture isn't considered during construction. That's why experienced Amish furniture makers often allow lumber to acclimate before beginning major projects. Boards are stacked carefully with small spacers between them, allowing air to circulate evenly. Nothing is rushed. Patience is part of the process. Joinery techniques developed centuries ago also help furniture survive seasonal movement. Instead of relying entirely on screws or synthetic adhesives, traditional joints allow wood to respond naturally to changing humidity without splitting apart. This attention to detail explains why many handmade Amish pieces are admired for lasting generations. The goal has never been simply to make furniture. The goal is to create something grandchildren may one day inherit. That long-term mindset changes every decision. It encourages people to ask not, will this work today? But rather, will this still work 50 years from now? And perhaps that's one of the greatest differences between old-world craftsmanship and modern convenience. One focuses on immediate results. The other plans for a lifetime. But the lessons don't stop in the workshop. They extend into every corner of the farm. When people imagine humidity, they usually think about the inside of a house. The Amish think much more broadly. The condition of the land influences the condition of the buildings. Rainwater that pools beside a foundation can introduce moisture into basements. Poor drainage shortens the life of barns. Wet soil increases humidity around storage buildings. For that reason, Amish farms are often planned with careful attention to the movement of water. Roofs direct rainfall away from buildings. Gutters and drainage channels help protect foundations. Barnyards are maintained to reduce standing water. Firewood is stacked off the ground so air can circulate underneath. Hay is monitored closely before storage because moisture trapped deep inside a bale can lead to spoilage, or, in rare cases, dangerous heat buildup. These are not isolated chores. They are connected responsibilities. When one area is neglected, other problems often follow. A damp woodpile makes heating more difficult. Poor ventilation affects livestock. Excess moisture encourages insects. One small oversight can ripple across the entire farm. That interconnected way of thinking has shaped Amish life for generations. Nothing exists alone. Every task supports another. Every season prepares for the next. And this is where outsiders often misunderstand the Amish. Many assume they reject technology simply because it is modern. The reality is more thoughtful than that. It's easy to imagine that the Amish avoid electric appliances because they dislike innovation. But their decisions are usually guided by a different question. Will this strengthen or weaken the family and the community? Many Amish communities evaluate new technologies carefully, considering how each one may affect daily life, relationships, and long-term values. That doesn't mean every Amish settlement makes identical choices. Different communities follow different guidelines, and some permit certain technologies that others do not. But across many settlements, a common pattern appears. Whenever possible, solve the problem with skill before relying on machinery. If better ventilation works, begin there. If changing daily routines helps, start with those. If improving the building itself prevents moisture problems, that solution may last for decades without requiring electricity. This way of thinking doesn't reject tools. It simply places human judgment first. Technology becomes a helper rather than the foundation. Ironically, many architects and builders today are rediscovering similar ideas. Passive ventilation. Breathable materials. Natural cooling. Climate-responsive design. These concepts are increasingly discussed as practical ways to build healthier, more efficient homes. In some respects, old traditions are quietly influencing modern innovation. But perhaps the greatest lesson isn't about construction at all. It's about the pace of life. Spend a day on an Amish farm, and you'll notice something unusual. There is very little unnecessary rushing. Morning chores follow familiar rhythms. Meals happen together. Seasonal work unfolds according to weather rather than notifications on a phone. This slower pace creates something surprisingly valuable. Attention. People notice when the barn feels unusually damp. They recognize changes in the smell of stored grain. They can often tell when wood has absorbed extra moisture simply by handling it. A modern sensor may provide precise numbers. Experience provides awareness. Neither is inherently better. But one depends on constant observation. The other depends on constant measurement. That difference shapes the entire household. Instead of reacting after a problem appears, many Amish families become skilled at noticing subtle changes before they grow into larger ones. It's an ability developed over years, not through formal classes, but through everyday living. And while this way of life may seem old-fashioned, it contains an insight that feels surprisingly relevant today. Sometimes the most effective solution isn't adding another device. Sometimes it's paying closer attention to the environment that's already around us. But one final lesson remains. And it may be the most important of all. By now, it should be clear that the ordinary clay brick from the beginning of our story was never the entire secret. Yes, fired clay can absorb and release small amounts of moisture. In the right place, it can help buffer changes in humidity. But by itself, it cannot replace a modern dehumidifier. That isn't why it matters. The brick represents something much larger. It symbolizes a philosophy that has guided Amish life for generations, a belief that the best solution often begins long before a problem appears. Instead of asking how to remove moisture after it has filled a room, they ask how to design homes, barns, workshops, and daily routines so that moisture rarely becomes overwhelming in the first place. Every open window. Every carefully placed vent. Every covered porch. Every dry wood pile. Every thoughtfully built cellar. Every habit passed from parents to children. Each one contributes a little. No single practice is extraordinary on its own. Together, they form a remarkably effective system. Modern life often encourages us to search for one product that promises to solve every problem. The Amish remind us that lasting solutions are frequently built from dozens of small choices working together. And this is where the story becomes surprisingly relevant, not only for people living on farms, but for anyone hoping to create a healthier, more resilient home. Few people watching this video are likely to abandon electricity or build an Amish farmhouse from scratch. And that isn't the lesson. The value of Amish traditions isn't found in copying every aspect of their lifestyle. It's found in understanding the principles behind it. The first lesson is preparedness. Rather than waiting for problems to grow, many Amish families build routines that prevent those problems from taking hold. Whether it's maintaining a roof before it leaks, rotating stored food before it spoils, or ensuring proper airflow before humidity rises, prevention almost always costs less than repair. The second lesson is learning how our homes actually work. Many people know every feature on their smartphone but couldn't explain where moisture enters their own house after a heavy rain. The Amish often develop an intimate understanding of their buildings because they help construct, repair, and maintain them throughout their lives. That knowledge creates confidence. The third lesson is respecting natural materials. Wood, brick, stone, and lime have served builders for centuries. While modern materials offer tremendous advantages, traditional materials remind us that buildings can be designed to cooperate with nature rather than constantly resisting it. Another lesson is patience. Modern culture celebrates speed. The Amish often celebrate durability. A well-built barn isn't expected to last 10 years. It is built with the hope that children and grandchildren will someday use it. A handcrafted dining table isn't purchased simply because it looks attractive. It is made to become part of family history. That perspective changes how resources are used. Instead of replacing, they repair. Instead of discarding, they restore. Instead of chasing constant upgrades, they care for what they already own. There is also a lesson about community. When storms damage a roof, neighbors frequently arrive with tools before anyone has to ask. When a new family builds a home or barn, relatives and friends work side by side. Knowledge is shared openly. Skills are passed from one generation to the next. In many modern neighborhoods, people may barely know the names of those living next door. The Amish demonstrate the remarkable strength that comes from shared responsibility. Finally, there is perhaps the simplest lesson of all. Pay attention. Notice how sunlight enters your home. Notice where damp air collects. Notice how fresh air moves through open windows. Notice the condition of the things you rely upon every day. Observation has always been one of humanity's most valuable tools. Long before digital displays measured humidity to the nearest percentage point, careful observation helped families preserve food, protect homes, and prepare for changing seasons. Technology can provide incredible assistance. But awareness remains irreplaceable. The world has changed dramatically over the past century. Homes have become more efficient. Appliances have become more powerful. Climate control has become almost effortless. Yet many people also find themselves increasingly disconnected from the spaces they inhabit. Problems often remain invisible until an alarm sounds or a repair becomes expensive. Traditional Amish practices offer an alternative perspective. They encourage involvement rather than dependence. Participation rather than automation. Stewardship rather than constant consumption. These ideas are not limited to one community or one religion. They reflect timeless habits that have helped families adapt through changing technologies, changing economies, and changing generations. Perhaps that explains why so many visitors leave Amish country with a sense that they've witnessed something difficult to describe. Not perfection. Not simplicity for its own sake. But intentional living. A way of making everyday choices with tomorrow in mind. In a world that often moves faster every year, that quiet intentionality may be one of the rarest resources of all. So, did the Amish really discover a magical $2 brick that pulls water from the air? Not exactly. The brick is real. Its ability to absorb and release a small amount of moisture is real. But the true secret was never hidden inside a single object. It was hidden inside a way of thinking. For generations, Amish families have approached moisture the same way they approach farming, woodworking, food preservation, and community life. Observe carefully. Work with nature. Choose durable materials. Maintain what you build. Pass practical knowledge to the next generation. Those principles don't require electricity. They don't become obsolete. And they aren't limited to one culture. Whether you live in a city apartment, a suburban neighborhood, or a farmhouse surrounded by fields, there is something quietly powerful about remembering that the best solutions are often the ones built into our habits long before they are needed. Perhaps that's why, when summer humidity settles over the countryside, Amish homes often remain comfortable, not because one inexpensive brick performs miracles, but because generations of thoughtful craftsmanship, careful observation, and practical wisdom continue doing what they have always done. Sometimes the greatest innovation isn't inventing something new. Sometimes it's remembering something old. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed learning about Amish life and hidden traditions that most people never see, be sure to subscribe and join us for more fascinating stories from beyond the Amish world. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring forgotten wisdom, and remember that some of the most valuable lessons are often hidden in the quiet routines of everyday life.